turned down on 42nd Street. Almost hit another car. Spilled my coffee on my jeans, and I said, "Oh, they're ruined now." She said, "Oh, they're better now. It's just a matter of perspective." She kissed my cheek. It's the little imperfections that make them unique. I don't know how she does it, but she can see the stars in the city. She sees her diamond.
And welcome to Education, Leadership, and Beyond, Surviving and Thriving. My name is Andrew Murata, host of the show, and it is show number 71. Happy to be back on air. And like all things that are live, we had some technical difficulties here before, but we were able to get on Wi-Fi and get this thing going. So excited to have show number 71 kicking off, and really excited to meet today's guest coming up here, Beth Houf. Beth is a principal in Missouri, and Beth is the co-author of the best-selling Lead Like a Pirate, and is doing tremendous things in education. So I'm really excited to talk to Beth about some of the things going on at her school and going on in her life. So I appreciate her making the time during a busy day. Wait till we see Beth's hat that she has on, because I know she wore many hats. So one of the things we are trying to do on Be Live is interact with our guests. So I see a couple people tuning in here. Dakota McGill, one of my former students, is on here. I see Jay Billy is on here. So to our audience that is watching live, one of the things I do want to try to do is work you into the show. And so if you have a question or a comment for Beth, please leave that there, and we will try to get it in. So also a couple of housekeeping items. I do want to give a shout out to today's sponsor, Catskill Marketing. They are a group that has been helping me. They do a lot of marketing work, a lot of social media work, a lot of website work, and basically to kind of help with all things. If you are running your own business, if you are an author, things like that. They work with social media management and graphic design. So do want to give a shout out to Catskill Marketing. And their information is at catskillmarketing.com. You can email them at info@catskillmarketing.com. And their number to my friend Johnny and Matt, 845-787-3927, our friends at Catskill Marketing. So, and we are going to meet Beth Houf coming up here. Sorry, Beth. And if you heard the music to open the show, those were my friends Old Dominion, the country band, and I love Old Dominion. I love country music, and that was Stars in the City. And if you listen to the lyrics of that song, it's really, I love it. It's a great song, but I played that for Beth because Beth is a leader that sees stars in the city. And what do I mean by that? Beth is a principal. Beth is an author. Beth is a mother, right? And regardless of the situations going on, whether at her home or in her life, she is someone that sees the positive in things. So it's kind of an oxymoron, right? The stars in the city. In that song, they talk about things that happen to you that most people will think are bad, right? He says in the lyrics, you spilled coffee on the jeans, and the guy's complaining, but the girl says, hey, it makes him look good. It makes him look more authentic. And it's just looking at the positives in situations. And as leaders, that's important that we do that. So I see my friend Tom Ricard is watching live here also, as well as my sister, Suzanne Carbonero. So keep those questions coming in. In addition to Stars in the City, another thing I wanted to mention is a story from one of my favorite books, Leading Narratives. And they're great stories. And in reflecting and preparing for the show, one of the stories in there is called The Broken Bucket, right? And the story goes that a woman in a town had to go into town every day to get water, and then she brought the water back for her family. And she had two different buckets. One was perfect and didn't spill any water, and the other bucket had some cracks in it. And as she walked with the buckets, the one with the crack would spill water, right? And it would drip water along the way. And one day the bucket said to her, listen, I'm sorry, I'm not getting the job done. I'm not as good as the other bucket that you have because I'm leaking water and I'm dropping that water. And she said to the bucket, listen, I use you because you are so valuable. You let out just enough water each and every day to feed the vegetables along the way and provide flowers along the walkway every day when I get water. So by you letting out this just enough water, you are helping the environment. You are helping me as the leader of my family. So the story goes, right, that bucket was doing a job, and that woman found the good things in the crack in the bucket. A story from my friend Dan Spianauer, Leading Narratives, great stories. So as a school leader, find the positives in things that you're looking at, and look at things from the bright side. And speaking of the bright side, there she is, folks. That is Beth Houf. Beth, welcome to Education, Leadership, and Beyond.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Look forward to it.
And we got to chat a few minutes here, and you're a country music fan. You were just in Nashville, and you heard that opening concept, Beth, about being positive in our roles as school leaders. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think positivity is huge. And as a school leader, unfortunately, there's a lot of not great things that happen or that we have to deal with in our role. But you can always, there's a quote, it talks about just because you're given a cactus doesn't mean you need to sit on it. And that's really what it's about for me. And that every person that I have the chance to interact with every day, I want them to take, as a school principal, so many people take on the personality of the principal or kind of how the principal is reacting. I think Todd Whitaker says when the principal sneezes, everyone catches that. And I want to sneeze with awesome. I mean, that's what I want folks when they're done with me to either, have that positivity from them or feel like I've listened to help serve them, to make their load a little lighter and just, make it a better day because of the interaction they've had with me. Definitely.
So we've had Jay Billy on the show before. Right. Jay had all his hats in the back of him, and you're wearing those bright lights there to brighten the day of your middle schoolers. Or tell me about the hat you're wearing.
Well, it's been a busy day, much like so many of going through right now, as we are super short-handed today. And so today we did not have our counselors. We were 3 lunch ladies short. We were multiple teachers short. And so today, literally, my hats have been, and I feel like that's really what our role as the school leader is too, is we help where we're needed. And that's how we make sure that we serve those. So today I started the day, outside we do Positive Sign Tuesdays. And so every Tuesday we have a positive message. Tuesday is always kind of a tough day to get back into. And so today was You Shine. And I got that idea from an awesome school leader, Brian McCann. He's in Massachusetts. And so that's how we started the day. But then I immediately went to the role of counselor because we had kids that needed that role. And then I had a principal of the day, a student principal of the day as well. So kept her busy helping me do all of the different things that I do on a normal day. And then went to the lunchroom to help with supervision and realized we were 3 lunch ladies short. So put the hairnet on, which then made this whole hair not look great. So I said, got to put a different hat on if I'm taking the hairnet off. And then went back into the role. Before lunch, I had that chance to teach 7th grade history because the teacher needed to leave all of a sudden. And so it's just been one of those days. We're doing the 12 days before winter break. And so today's day was room service. And so we had our teachers ordered room service. We kind of did the Uber Eats version of it instead of the room service sign. So they signed up for what they wanted online, like Uber Eats. And we this afternoon took the cart around. My assistant tweeted out some great video of singing. And so we were able to give each staff member a snack and a drink. And the principal of the day helped me out with that too. So being festive with the lights and just bringing a smile to the faces of everyone. We had a 3-day weekend. So needed a little extra caffeine this afternoon, I think, for our staff. So that was our day. And just, like right before I got on with you, I had a whole office full of people. So just been, you just keep going. So that's our hats for today.
That is unbelievable. All those things in one day. And
we're not done. We have basketball supervision tonight too. So I'm going to take a break and then go pick up the oldest son and then come back here for our final. We have our last home game tonight. So we'll get to do that tonight and see.
Your last home game, you're just wrapping up basketball.
Really. Yeah. We start. So in Missouri, we start school in August. So we start start quite a bit earlier than most of my East Coast friends. And then our middle school, we start our winter sports right after our fall sports are finished. So then we finish up before winter break. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, Beth, we have a lot to get into, and I mean, you're doing so many things. But one of the things with the program that I'd like to add to is interacting with our guests live. And there's a number of people watching live. One is my former assistant principal, who now is in our neighboring school district, Tom Ricard, and he's on there. And can you see the questions from where you're at, Beth?
Yeah, I see Tom's question right there. Yeah.
So what would you say to Tom there? He's asking about dealing with negative situations, specifically the assistant principals, which have to deal with a lot of discipline. So what would you say to that?
Well, I feel this is a subject I feel super passionate about. When my first role, this is my 11th year as an administrator. I was a elementary principal for 7 years, and this is my 4th year as principal. So I've never been an actual assistant principal, but I felt like in elementary, when I was by myself, I did everything. So I think that's helped me. I personally don't believe it's right to have specific delineated roles for assistant and principal. Like today, my assistant and I we wore so many hats. I don't feel it's fair to her to have to deal with all the negative all the time. So we are very intentional about making sure today with Woo Woo Eats, I mean, she was there rolling the carts with me, handing out the treats. She actually was the one that kind of organized it more. We also do positive referrals. So we have the negative referrals, and we have a lot of them. We're not even going to lie about that, because there are a lot of, this has been a particularly challenging year with behaviors, much more than any of my other 11. And so I don't want to make it seem as though we don't have any issues here at all, because we definitely have things we've worked through. But I make sure that I'm a teammate with her and make sure she and I both do teacher evaluations. We both give positive feedback and, growing feedback. We do all of the roles together. When you see pictures of us, it's usually us together, versus sometimes in the past it's been just me. Or when I see other principals, sometimes I see the assistant not being able to be a part of that. And I feel like every single day, part of my role is making sure that I keep her bucket full as well, because it's hard to get hammered with the discipline. She does the majority. I mean, she still does. I mean, she's 60, I'm probably 40. But like today, we had lunch drama, girl drama at lunch, which is not unlike most middle schools. And so we made sure that I worked through the issue when I got it. So it's not that I give her all of that. So I think that's important, is really as the principal, I've got to make sure that I am not making the assistant have all of the stuff that's not fun. Also, my role too, she's going to be a principal someday. That's her ultimate goal may be higher than that too, but she is going to be an amazing principal someday. But unless I give her opportunities to do all parts of our roles, she's not going to get there as much. So definitely, I think that would be, another thing as well. Just making sure she gets the chance to do the positives. The positive referrals are great. Our teachers refer all day long the positive things that are happening. And I have a blog post specifically that I've written on that. We actually do this on paper. So the teachers, when they see a kid going above and beyond, we have a template. The teachers write it out, and then they send the child to the office with the positive referral. And so today I had the chance to intercept a couple of them, but she gets to do the majority of those because it helps with the negative, balancing that out. Having a kid come down for a positive, especially in middle school, being able to call home on a positive in middle school is definitely a great thing too. And then we display those in our front hallway too, just one more way of building that positive school culture. As soon as you walk in, the first thing you see is our brag board that we have with our positive referrals. So hope that answered it a little bit. I can get a little wordy sometimes, so you just cut me off if I get too much.
Listen, you're the award-winning principal there, so we're going to let you go. So you already answered the next question then too, because I was going to ask you about, what is the culture in your school, and what are some changes that you've implemented to get to that culture? And you just named 6 or 7 things that you're doing each and every day to create that. Because I've heard of mailing home letters before and positive notes and calling home, but putting them on the board too, the brag board. I love it. I'm gonna take it and bring it here to New York. That's great. But tell me a little bit more about the culture in your school, and specifically some things that you and your leadership team are intentional in doing to bring that culture to your school.
Well, I think you brought up a huge point, and that's the leadership team. When I was moved here, specifically to work on. I don't know that turnaround's the right word, because there were a lot of great things going on, but we needed to make some big changes. We had some big data changes we had to make as well. But culture was the number one thing. When I speak, when I had the chance, I was out in Delaware last week, and I was talking a little bit about my journey as a principal. And, you know, the first school that I was at, when we had changes we had to make with data, I really looked at data and standardization to make the changes. The second school, culture was the first thing. And we were able to make so many changes more quickly because culture was the focus. And when you work on culture first, culture next, culture always, you set that breeding ground up for amazing things to happen. Whereas when you're so like focused and honed in on only data, you know, that's not, especially in middle school, like that's the last thing the kids want to talk to you about is that type of stuff. So like figuring out how can we build that school culture. I want to be here. The kids are wanting to be here. The students are wanting to, or the staff are wanting to be here. The parents want to be here. When you have a positive experience, then you can actually make data, you know, data can be part of that conversation a little bit more. But when you talk about the leadership team, that's huge for me. I had a teacher leader that I was talking to this weekend, and I said, you don't understand the power that you have as a teacher leader, because I can have things and try to make things happen from me. But when I have colleagues helping build that culture makes such a bigger difference, I think, within the school. So having not only teacher leaders, but then student leaders, you know, we have some specific intentional ways that our students lead as well. One of our quotes that Shelley and I share all the time is people are less likely to break down walls that they help build. And that's, to me, so big, is that if you can have folks really owning, not buy-in. I don't love to hear buy-in, because to me that sounds like we're selling cars, and that's not what it's about here. It's true ownership. It's true commitment to what's happening in our school. Then it works more. When we just make decisions and there's not a lot of ownership in them, whether it be for staff or with students, it's not going to happen. And I can give my assistant's on there right now too. There she is. I said, if you'd like to creep on and like tell them what it really is as I talk, go ahead and get on here. So Erica Hogan is right there.
There she goes.
You know, but whenever, for example, we were looking at data system changes. We used one specific program. We were noticing that a child would take the benchmark test, score one thing 1 hour, and another, like 2 grade levels different the next hour. And we really weren't getting good data. And so we said, we want to change, but we also have to have student ownership. And so we brought in the rep from the company. She sat down with our student council president, as well as one of our teachers. They were like the gatekeepers first, where if they liked it, then we were going to bring it into more folks. And so they completely were all about it. We brought it in and had student focus teams around it. So the kids came in with the sales rep. The sales rep was like, we've never had kids that we've had to talk to. They're like the hardest customers. I said, they're the ones that are going to be using it though. So why are we not asking their input on our curriculum decisions, on our assessment decisions? And so it was really neat. Now, when we implemented the first time, they're like, never mind, this is way too hard. I said, I know, but this is what you guys wanted. We're gonna use this, and it'll get a little easier as we go each time. But just again, having kids be a voice with our we're a PBIS school, so we have it's just, you know, and again, it's not a program. I'm not a programs person. It's people that make changes, not programs. But it's a structure that we utilize. And so, but we have kid voices in on every single part of that, of like, okay, so if we do a good thing, like what are the rewards you want? But it's not even about the rewards as much as it is what should our expectations be at our school? And, you know, they help bring that to life. So those are just a couple of examples, but it's not just me. When leaders talk to me about things, like when leaders say, hey, how do I make change happen more quickly? Well, you got to get a solid team in place to help make the change happen, and making sure that you're listening to all voices, and then making sure that you're really looking at different ways of making decisions that include those voices, for sure. It also means, and this is hard, but it also means confronting in a professional way those that are culture killers. And so those, it's not an easy, 11 years in, I still don't wake up and say, man, I really hope I can have a difficult conversation with an adult today. Like, that is not what I want. But I also know the longer I let that toxicity happen, the more it poisons. Like, unfortunately, that's the thing I wish I knew my first year as an administrator, is I can sit down and say, hey, when you do this, this happens. And it's not okay. It's not okay for that to happen to our, to our staff. So there's just a couple examples of the things that we do.
And Beth, just listening to you talk, you could tell that you're excellent at your job, and this is great. Well, for those listening, I mean, just all the things you're saying. So give me a specific example, right? Because I work in public education also, and as I tell people around here, my father owned his own pharmacy, right? If he wanted to go out and paint the outside of the pharmacy blue, he did it because it was his pharmacy. We don't live in that world. Tell me a specific example of a culture killer, right? Something, not the person, but what the action or the behavior. And then what was that conversation like?
So I think some of the biggest culture killers that I've noticed are just negativity about kids. So just negative talk about kids, negative assumptions about kids, something that I've always been, and this is something from the very beginning. I've had the honor of being the principal of my own children. My son, my oldest, my 14-year-old, my freshman, I was his principal all through elementary, and then I moved up with him to middle school. So as you can imagine, that was a great thing for him, bless his heart. So this is his first year without me, but the way I look at it is, and I've always explained this is, guys, like, you need to understand whatever kid you're talking about in the lounge, I'm going to just substitute Paul Houf's name in there and assume that you're talking about my own child. Like, that's not how we talk about kids around here. Same thing is we're talking about the adults in our campus. Like, we're all in this together. We're also like really having that conversation about that. It's been very helpful to have our building norms. And I know a lot of places have norms, and norms are just things you put on the wall that don't mean anything, but they really, really are meaningful here. And we call each other out on them, and it's hard. That's another thing, though, is it can't be the principal, cannot be the only person. Kind of goes back to the question that was out there earlier that Tom asked, is like, I can't be the only person calling, like, holding our staff to a high standard. We spent in 3-year, we're a professional learning community school as well. Missouri has statewide training that we do that's modeled on the work of the DeFores. And so when we went through that, our first 2 years, we spent specifically, what is our mission and what's our vision? And then what are our collective commitments that we commit to make that happen? So for example, I mean, one of our collective commitments is risk taking. It doesn't sound quite like that. I'm looking back at my list is behind me, but we have, with that is that we're willing to push each other. We're not going to stay status quo. But we're always going to go back to, like, we're not just going to be, it's calculated risks too. We're not just going crazy and out there wild. We're making sure that they're calculated risks. Sure. Another one of our norms is telling our story of our school through social media. That was one of the negative things that had happened with our school, is that people were telling our story, but they weren't telling our story. They were telling the story they thought was happening. And so that was one of the very first things we had to do, was figure out how to tell our story. And at first I was the chief storyteller. I had to be, but they wanted me to be. And that's another thing I share with leaders, is that, it's great to lead from behind. There are times you need to do that. And I'm blessed that I'm in a position now where I lead from behind more often than not. But when I first moved roles, I needed to lead from the front, and they needed me to lead from the front. They told me they needed me to lead from the front. And then I really have to think about, do I need to be at the side right now? Do I need to be in the back? Do I need to be in the front? And as leaders, we have to realize we can't just say, oh, I'm going to be back here in the back, when you need to be in the front line. Whenever there's crisis situations and things like that, I go right to the front. I'm not like, okay, you guys figure that out, I'm back here. I'll get you from back here. So with that piece of social media, really making sure that I started to model that, but then our teachers got right in there. And now our parents and our students actually help us tell our story as well, which has been a great thing to have happen.
This is a great journey you're on, Beth. You're certainly in the right place. And again, I'd like to talk a little now about the journey that you're on with Lead Like a Pirate and the book you wrote with Shelley Burgess. This is a tremendous book. It is going to be our book recommendation for today and the whole Teach Like a Pirate series. But Beth, before we jump into that, again, if you are watching live, put a question up there. Ms. Hogan, you work with Beth. Put a question up there for her. Ted Dabney is a local business owner. He talked about a culture of positivity there, and it's a winning team. So, but your journey at your school is great. Tell me about this other journey you're on, and what has it been like with the success of the book that you wrote here?
Well, I think for me, it's been just kind of a little surreal with that. I thought of myself as an author. That was nothing that I wasn't a button or a bucket list item for me. I don't even consider myself a writer. So sometimes I have to remember that positive self-talk stuff that I always tell the kids all the time. So I've shared this story a lot. I share it at the beginning of the book, but I was a person in 2014 who was ready to leave the field of education. I was struggling. I kind of had hit a wall. as I shared a little bit, I was really, I came up as an administrator in time of No Child Left Behind. My first school, 2 weeks before I started, found out we were a failing school, and I had to send out letters to all the parents in our community. We only have 3 elementaries in our district. So as you can imagine, sending a letter home that says, hey, your child goes to a failing school, feel free to go to one of these other schools. That was not a culture builder at all. So I immediately went to test scores and how are we going to get these test scores? And, we assessed everything that walked, I felt like, and fell into that trap of where we were educationally at that time. And I didn't have the confidence in myself as a leader yet to say, hey, this doesn't make sense to do this. Like, why are we doing this to kids right now? 2014, we came off the list. We were one of the first schools off the list. And really our school was a good school. I think it was, my son was there. I felt proud of my school. I felt proud of being the principal there, but I was really burnt out. And so I went to a principal conference in Nashville. I really was, like I said, contemplating leaving, but I was ready to go to a conference in Nashville and had the chance. I went to one of the corporate parties that they had for principals and get in line for nachos and wings. And the person in front of me that I meet's Jay Billy. And so Jay sits with he has a group from New Jersey. I have a group from Missouri. We sit there and we visit. And he said, he heard my story. He's like, I don't think you're burnt out. I just think, he's like, are you on Twitter? And I said, I have a Twitter, but I don't know what to do with it. And I really I followed the same people that were in the Twitter workshop with me that when I learned about Twitter. And he took my phone from me and he said, you're not following the right people. And so he said, here, Todd Whitaker, he's on Twitter 24/7 and you can learn from him. And all of the others. And Dave Burgess was another one that he said, hey, have you heard of Teach Like a Pirate? I said, kind of snarkily at that point, I was like, I've heard of all of the Teach Likes. Why should Teach Like a Pirate be any different? And he said, no, he's like, you don't understand. I really think this is kind of what's wrong with you right now is you've lost your passion for what you do. And your enthusiasm is gone because you're not aligned with your passion. And so I actually went back after I got back to my room and I Googled Teach Like a Pirate and I found a blog post by Shelley Burgess. And I saw just her talking about all of these things, the passion, the immersion, the rapport, the asking, analyzing, transformation, and enthusiasm through the eyes of an administrator. And I said, yes, as soon as I made that shift, and I immediately got slammed with bad news. I went into what I thought a principal should be instead of how I could lead like me. And I listened to Dave speak. Nice. And I know you've had Dave on the show and Dave has so much energy and so much positivity and so much crazy in him that he's so proud to just let out there that I'm like, why am I not being my real me? So came back to school that fall and just, on fire. And we had an amazing year. So amazing to where my superintendent was like, hey, why don't you move up to middle school? And so, reluctantly I did come to middle school but as I was doing that, I met Shelley and Dave all online, I had not met them in real life. And Shelley and I became very, very close friends immediately with our leadership. We have very similar philosophies. And then Dave and I are very close friends because of our teaching like pipe. And that's how I taught when I was in the classroom. Probably not quite like Dave, but close. And so Shelley said, how about we write this book? And I said, that sounds great. And we ended up writing on Google Docs before we even met in person. And it was just a way to really people have been asking for that leadership side of TLAP for a long time. And I had the opportunity to take it into the leadership role, the TLAP and leadership role. And so we wrote our presentations first, which is kind of how Dave did it as well. So we got out there and did presentations for AMLE and other organizations. And then just locally as well, Missouri has a lot of great support for the lab. And then we were able to take all of that and then get it into the book. And really the book, what's been neat is it's just been an archive of our journey, but then an archive of all these resources, because that's something that Shelley and I feel we don't ever want a principal to feel alone. We don't ever want a school leader to feel like that they don't have a support system. And that's really kind of what our goal was developing Lead Lab, is we've got a group of people that we're always welcoming new folks in, that we got your back. We're here for you. We're ready to support you. We're a phone call away. We're a plane ride away, whatever we need to do to help you understand that what we're doing as school leaders is life-changing work, and that we don't ever want anyone to ever feel like they want to change careers because they don't have that support.
Well, and people that give advice about writing books, write something that you know about or write something that you're good at. And you could tell the way it comes out in here. And again, just listening to you talk. But for something that you did collaboratively online, this is unbelievable. If I could only open to one page or one section, because there's so many good things in here, but if I could only pick one, what do you think is the most important part of the book, or your favorite part of it?
That's the hard one for me. Somebody asked me that the other day, and I'm like, it's like picking between my two kids. Like, which one's my favorite? Whichever one's in front of me is what I always tell the kids. But like for me, I mean, the passion's what I'm always going to go back to, because when you can't fake passion, you can't fake what you're passionate about. And when you know, and when you're really in tune with what you're passionate about as a leader and as a person personally as well, then it makes it so, like, it really makes everything else come to life for you. A close second would be that transformation piece, because I think within education, well, not just education, like just in general, like we just keep doing things because that's the way we've always done them. And so like, for me, it's always about, okay, is this like, how could we do this better? How can we kick this up a notch? Why are we continuing to do this when this makes no sense? Or the kids don't like it's not about liking, but it's about, this isn't an effective practice. Why do we keep doing it? So that transformation piece is huge for me as well.
Great. Beth, is there something coming up next? There's so much going on, with Lead Like a Pirate and hashtag TLAP, Teach Like a Pirate. Mm-hmm. The stuff online on Twitter that you guys put out is, it's unbelievable, right? I'm doing a training at my school coming up here about, PLN and getting on Twitter and using it. And you guys are going to be, my main focus. But what do you have coming up next with your group?
Well, so one thing that I feel super passionate about is amplifying the voices of other leaders. I'm similar to what you do as well, is like taking time to really recognize those other leaders that are going above and beyond and have that foundational pieces of Lead Lab. And so like for us, it's been starting a line of Lead Lab guidebooks. And so you featured Jay Billy before, and Jay was our very first author. Jay kind of brought me together with the Burgesses, which was great. But Jay is unbelievable about building positive school culture. And so his book, Lead with Culture, was the first in our series. The idea behind that series was, someone asked, what chapter was missing from Lead Lab? And I'm like, well, the way we've taken that is Lead Lab was kind of the thick book on leadership. And then now people that have read that, they already understand the foundational pieces. How can we give them smaller books that are a little bit easier to read, like not as long? Because school leaders are like, I've got this much time. I don't have time to read a 300-page book. But pick up Jay's book. And, Jay's book is it's also very inspirational. So you can sit and read it in an hour and a half and you're done. And you have 150 ideas that you can take back and use. So that was really what our goal was in our Lead Lab guide, was to amplify the voices of amazing leaders and then get some strategies in the hands of leaders that might, I need some ideas for culture. Oh, here we go. I need some ideas for literacy and leading with literacy. Mandy Ellis's book, Lead with Literacy, balancing, which is not a real thing, but that's what our ladies in our Balance Like a Pirate talk all about, is how do we actually find a good balance. And that's our third book in the series. The fourth book is going to be released very soon, and it's called Lead Beyond Your Titles. I think we're still playing around with that one, but it's written by Neely Bartley. Neely is a technology integration coach / teacher in Boston, and she talks about leading when your title may not implicate that you're a leader, because so many folks don't consider themselves a leader from the teacher role, but you can make such amazing things happen when you're leading in that teacher role. I think you can make change happen a lot quicker when you actually are considered a teacher or a teacher leader, because people listen to you differently at that point. So can't wait. So that's kind of for us, like what we're looking at. And then we have multiple other Lead Like a Pirate guides out in the works right now as well that will be coming out. We try not to overpopulate, but like every couple of months we want to be able to release another one or something like that as well.
Cool. Beth, you talked about the story of when you met Jay and the energy of Nashville that kind of re-sparked your career and your being into it with what you were doing. But how about now? You're 3 years out, 4 years out from that experience. How do you continue to sharpen the saw? I mean, you have young children. Middle school can be draining. What do you do to re-energize or sharpen your own saw?
Well, I think for me, really, it's been interesting because I'm a person that goes. Like I don't stop for very long. And one thing this year I've really worked that I feel like our staff and that we need is a lot of mindfulness too, of how do we make sure we don't burn out? Like, how do we make sure that we truly are taking care of ourselves? And so I've been super intentional as a leader to really listen to the voices of our staff too, of that, hey, we're not sure how to deal with the effects of trauma in our students sometimes, but just that whole, that compassion fatigue that our staff is feeling, and that sometimes I don't realize I have that because I don't ever sit still long enough to realize, oh my gosh, this is what it's, so for me, it's really been looking like understanding that we've got to make sure as leaders to acknowledge and give strategies to our staff. Like yesterday during our professional development day, we had a counselor that came in and worked with us on, all right, so self-care, let's talk about self-care. And as leaders, what are we doing to make sure that we are being mindful of our self-care? And it doesn't always just mean yoga and breathing. I mean, it can be so many other things as well. For me, it's like, I like to connect socially to my friends. So making sure that I'm taking time. I enjoy social media. Like, I don't feel like that is something that can be, I shouldn't say, I enjoy certain parts of social media. I still don't love, like, Facebook is not my favorite thing in the world, but I've realized it's a great tool for me to reach families and things like that. It's a way that my in-laws know that I keep my kids alive for them. But I'm not a fan of, like, all the drama that social media can have, but which is why I'm a huge advocate of using it in positive ways with kids, so they can see we can use it for positive ways. But for me, like, I don't love to work out, but, like, I make myself run, or I make myself walk, or I make myself go. I love being outside, so I do like to do that. But that's one way I keep myself kind of sharp in the saw. I love to hang out with my friends. Like, I went to Nashville for Neely's actually 40th birthday, took time to just laugh and have fun with friends, and then connect with my, it's been great because, like, Jay is a perfect person to be able to share like the struggles and positive things with, finding you kind of your principal twins and having those conversations. Well, and of course my kids, with all of the things that they do, but we just take a lot of time just to hang out too. We live on a 300-acre farm. So just wandering through the farm and fishing and doing those type of things too. Making time for that.
Cool, Beth. You got a lot going on. We are going to get to rapid fire before that, but my sister is on here watching. She's a fan of yours, Suzanne Carbonero. She's the director of assessment from the Philadelphia College of Pharmacy. And so a question for Suzanne, all the positive cultures you're doing, all those things you're doing, and, we kind of call it the headline test, right? Because those things, or a lot of those things, don't make the headline of the newspaper. It's those test scores and those assessments. So how do you balance that to make sure that the kids are high achieving, and you are, you never want to be at the bottom of those lists, right? You're looking at those numbers, and like you mentioned about data. So tell me about, just real quickly, how do you balance that with those state tests, certainly with the younger kids, with that anxiety and all of that kind of stuff? How do you manage that?
Well, I think, just knowing kind of the climate of our country right now, it's interesting. Each place is a little different. In the Midwest, there's a testing stigma, but our state specifically, we've gone through a lot of changes in our standards. So we've gone through 3 versions of a test in the past. Since I've been a principal, I believe it's been 4 versions now. So we've learned that we can't chase test scores. We just week before last, I guess, got our results back from last year's test. So, and it's still embargoed. So I haven't been able to share, I don't even have specific breakdowns or item bench. So I can't use that to do much right now. So what I can, though, is we use live assess. To me, it means, how do we make sure that we have stellar assessment practices happening daily, so that when I meet with my Board of Education, I show them our local data that is nationally normed as well. We use NWEA as our assessment. And so we work with that to show okay, so here's where we are, here's how it relates to our standards, and here's what we're doing about it. We are a standards-based grading school, so our kids actually have data binders that they utilize. They have objective-based on there. So I was in an ELA classroom today where they were going through, okay, here's our proficiency scale on this. And so the kids they go in and they keep track of their proficiency targets towards their objective goals that will then be on their grade card too. So it's more about the state test means more when you don't have all of those other things going on. But when folks can see that you are tracking data that's meaningful daily, and then making sure that a school is a place, because like you said, there's not really a standardized test. There's never a standardized testing on culture. You're not going to have that. That's just not what we do. Right. So it's that's why the piece of telling our story and showing the great things that we're doing, showing the hard work and the lessons that are living our mission through our social media. So parents realize, hey, we are working every single day. So when test scores come out, it's not, and we're one middle school in our town. So really we don't have comparison groups as much. So I think that's a little bit of it. For me, though, I'm not. I mean, for anyone that listens to me speak, I'm not. I'm not driven by test scores because I know I don't want to stress kids out so much. I have no idea what I scored on my middle school tests, and here I am. And I think sometimes we've been so uber focused on that. There are so many other ways we could hold schools accountable than one single test measure. And so I think sometimes when you hold a measure so high, I think it can it's a culture killer. So I think we use that to inform a lot, look at what we're doing. But like, I can't now, we've got 3.5 months until we test again. So I don't even know what I'm supposed to do for 3 months, to do there.
You gotta put a different hat on. You should be judged on how many different hats you wear in one day.
Exactly. So middle schoolers are already dealing with a lot. They don't need that extra pressure of you have to do well or else, that's not a healthy thing. So figuring out how to balance that.
Beth, we're running out of time. You're doing an amazing job. You're doing a great job at your school, just listening to you. Let's get to rapid fire, Beth. These are the things that come right off the top of your head, your quick answer. Last book you read?
Last book I read was The Boy That Was Raised as a Dog. It was an excellent book. I can't remember the author, but it was written by a psychiatrist, and it was all about his clinical studies and of kids in trauma, and then what he would do to help the kids overcome the massive trauma that they endured. So great book.
Last movie you saw?
The Grinch, the new version with my youngest.
Okay. Favorite place to travel?
Ooh, I just went to Alaska in October. It's probably one of my new favorites. I love Hawaii though too. So two of my favorites.
Two extremes there.
Two extremes. But I think that's what's cool. Is like the cultures are very similar though, because they're extreme and they're just different. So love that. Love both of those places.
Best thing about being a middle school principal?
I love the kids. I mean, the kids are so goofy, just like me. I think they make me feel a little more normal. So I think that just every day is a new day, and then every minute in the day is a new day. And I really feel like middle schoolers are not, I think in society, we don't give them a lot of credit. We think that they're not the most, positive all the time. And middle schoolers are amazing. They're amazing kids. So, and the people that choose to work with them are pretty darn awesome too.
Most famous, and forgive me for saying this incorrectly, Missourian? Someone from Missouri? Is it Missourian?
Yeah, I think that would be famous Missourians. That's when I taught fourth grade, we would do this.
Okay.
Wow, there's so many famous Missourians. But I think probably, I keep thinking Nelly, and I shouldn't say that, but my son, whenever it was famous Missourian time when he was in fourth grade, he dressed up like Nelly, the rapper. I'm like, oh my gosh, of all the people, I bet, hey, there you go. He is from St. Louis, so there you go. Harry S. Truman's probably like the more reputable answer to that one, right?
Well, we visited St. Louis and Kansas City for the past 2 summers and had a great experience. So we enjoyed it. You talked a lot about motivation today. Mm-hmm. What is something that motivates you?
Something that motivates me, I think, like, again, I go back to my biggest why are my kids. Like, I want to make sure that I am still leading schools that I'm proud to send my own kids to. And so I think they're my biggest motivators every single day.
I love that. That's one of our philosophies. Treat every kid as if they're your kid. And you said, hey, sub that name in for my son.
Yep,
so that's
exactly.
Great. Yeah. Beth, besides your job and your family, what is something that you are most proud of?
Well, I think it's hard because Lead Lab to me is part of what I do here, but I think I'm super proud to have been able to help cultivate and grow our Lead Lab community and offer that support for our other school leaders and whatever hat they may wear is, I think I'm super proud to be part of that.
And again, she's talking about Lead Like a Pirate. If you don't have it, go out and get it. I'm covering her name up there. Sorry, Beth. But this is it. And a great book. That's your son on the cover there, right? Is that him dressed up like a pirate?
No, that's me with my pirate boot there.
Nice. Short-term personal goal, 3 to 5 months.
I think for me, it's just keep doing what I'm doing. Principling like a pirate for 3 to 5 months. I mean, that's doing what I'm doing. I think that's the best thing ever.
Long-term goal, 3 to 5 years.
3 to 5 years, I really enjoy doing what I'm doing. I like being with kids. I love being a principal. I love speaking, as I can, but I don't speak. I speak every once a month, maybe, but I tend to keep that pretty limited because I love being here. But I love being able to have the perspective of a practicing principal when I'm speaking. Sometimes it's hard when you're not doing that work to be able to speak to. I mean, you still can, but it makes it a little bit harder, and relevancy can be a little bit harder. So I think right now I don't have any goals to do anything different than I'm doing right now.
Cool. Beth, you've helped so many. How can people get in touch with you, and or how can they follow you on social media?
Alrighty. So I think the easiest way is to through two forms. The Twitter is probably the easiest, and it's just at Beth Houf, just like my name is spelled on the book, at BethHouf. Also, email. My personal email account is pretty easy way to get a hold of me too, and it's BethHouf@gmail.com. So.
Okay. Well, you did tremendous today. I appreciate it. You're going to a basketball game tonight.
Yes, I'm going to go. I have my 8-year-old is running around here somewhere, so I'm going to check on him, make sure he's fed, and then we have our, like I said, our last home game tonight. So I'll get a chance to be around our families and our kids a little bit more.
So basketball hat and mom hat you're putting on. So that's like 6 or 7 hats today.
Exactly, right?
Well, I'm going to cue our song back up. Beth, thanks for seeing the stars in the city. Thanks for doing a great job for our kids. And thank you for coming on Education, Leadership, and Beyond.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Beth, we're going to keep in touch. This is Beth Houf, everyone, award-winning principal and author. Beth, thanks so much for coming on. We'll cue this music up here, and my best to you, okay?
All right, sounds good.
All right, thanks for tuning in, everyone. Continue to go out and change the world for the better.
Took a U-turn down on 42nd Street, almost hit another car, spilled my coffee on my jeans, and I said, oh, they're ruined now. She said,